Thank you. Today I'm here to talk to you about something that I feel really strongly about, and that is employee burnout. Now, my dad is a business owner, and if I told him that I was giving a presentation on employee burnout, he would say, "That's not a real thing. I don't know what you're talking about. That's something made up for millennials." But the truth is that employee burnout is a real thing, and it's something that we really need to be understanding. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what employee burnout is, why it's important to understand, and how we can manage it in our organizations. So what is employee burnout? Like, what do you guys think of when you think of being burned out? Anyone? Working late. Awesome. Yep. So there's a lot of things that we all have our own notion of what employee burnout is. But something that's really interesting is in this past May, the World Health Organization actually redefined the definition of burnout for their next edition of the International Classification of Diseases. And the new definition of burnout is that it's an occupational phenomenon of chronic workplace stress. So some of the characteristics of burnout are feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, mental distance from one's job, or feelings of cynicism or negativity towards one's job, and then an overall reduced professional efficacy. So it's estimated that 67% of Americans are suffering from workplace burnout. Let's think about that in our own organizations. If 67% of our employees are feeling burned out, how are we going to, provide good services to our clients and customers? So why does it matter? Why is it important to understand burnout and why it's such a big issue? The reason that I brought up this new definition and classification from the World Health Organization is because with this new information, burnout is now being recognized as a serious and severe workplace issue. There's a lot of different things that burnout can impact in our organizations, and so we're going to touch on what a few of those are. So, number one, productivity. There have been countless studies done over the years on the effects of productivity, and something that has been proven over and over is that the human brain is not wired to work 12 to 18 hours a day. That's just fact. In fact, the human brain is not really even wired to work over 8 to 10 hours a day. So if you've ever had a moment where you're sitting at your desk and you're thinking, what am I supposed to be doing? And you realize you've just been blanking out for the last 5 minutes, that's your brain's way of saying, I need to recuperate, I need some rest. If you feel like this is happening often, that probably means that you're working too hard. Someone who's an absolute pioneer when it came to productivity was Henry Ford. And I love talking about Henry Ford because back in the 1920s, Ford was struggling with their productivity. So Henry Ford did something really radical, and that was he decided to change his work week from 6 days a week to 5 and instituted a 40-hour work week. He also, at the same time, doubled the minimum wage, and people thought he was crazy for doing this. But it turns out that he was absolutely right, and productivity in the Ford manufacturing plants increased dramatically. Not only that, but it created such loyalty and pride amongst the Ford employees to work there that it became one of those great places to work even before its time. Another important issue is thinking about our health and wellness and how workplace burnout is affecting that. So the toll that it's taking on not only our physical health, but our psychological health is absolutely drastic. There's been a lot of studies right now that are being done to just determine how much, and this goes back to the World Health Organization's information, to figure out the toll that it's taking on our bodies when we're subject to chronic workplace stress. And what studies have found is that there's a significantly increased risk of things like coronary heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and then other conditions like depression and anxiety. Our employees deserve to come to work and feel good and healthy. And if their health conditions are a result of our work environment, then that's a serious problem and one that we need to be looking at really considerably. The last point I want to touch on is turnover. Now, we all know that being subject to chronic stress and working long hours is not sustainable over the long term. Of course, we all have moments where we're going to have a project where, we're going to work extra hours, or we might be a little bit stressed out. But if that becomes the norm, then that's a serious problem. And employees are going to start turning to other companies to solve that problem for them. It's really interesting because there's also been a lot of studies done on the cost of replacing an employee. And SHRM estimates that the cost of replacing an employee is anywhere from 90 to 200% of that employee's annual salary. If you combine that with the super low unemployment that we have in Utah right now, this is just not putting our organizations up for good financial success. And also, we all know the toll that it takes on employee morale when lots of good companies are leaving an organization. So now that we kind of understand a little bit more about why it matters, let's talk about how we can prevent or manage burnout in our organization. So luckily, I think that there are actually a lot of really simple things that we can do, and they're not going to cost us tons of money to implement. The first one is encourage your employees to take time off. We give our employees time off for a reason, and they should feel that they're able to use that time off. There's kind of a hot topic in the HR world right now, and that's the unlimited paid time off policy. A few years ago, it was all the rage, but what's been coming out recently is that a lot of companies and employees that have these policies are saying that they actually feel more uncomfortable taking time off, and reports are showing that they actually are taking less time off than those who have a designated number of days. Now, of course, there's several different reasons why different companies choose to implement a certain paid time off policy. And I'm definitely not saying that everyone should ditch the unlimited paid time off, but what I am saying is that you should be looking at your paid time off policies often, at least once a year, and trying to figure out if it's not only benefiting the company, but benefiting the employees as well. And really, truly encourage your employees to go on that vacation and take the time off. Another super simple thing we can do is measuring the pulse in our organization. I think any manager or HR practitioner at any point should pretty confidently be able to say what the overall sentiment of their organization is. And there's a lot of really simple ways that we can do this. There's tons of great tools out there now, like SurveyMonkey or even Google Forms, where you can create a survey to send to your employees to measure the engagement in the organization. Another thing, and it's super simple, it sounds so obvious, but is one-on-ones. And I think we all know we should be doing one-on-ones, but it's the first thing that gets pushed aside when things get busy. But if we're consistent with our one-on-ones with employees, we're giving them the opportunity to come in and say, you know what, I'm really stressed with this project, or I have this going on. And then we can pivot and help them figure out ways to manage that stress rather than them sitting with it and continuing to let the stress build. The other thing is an open door policy. And I don't mean the typical, handbook open door policy. I truly mean making sure that you're accessible to your employees. That employees feel like if they're having a problem that they can come and talk to you, even if it's not a scheduled one-on-one or something else. So the one that I feel the most passionate about is the next point, and that's avoiding hustle culture. So we all have created this idea that we need to be on all the time, whether that's at night, on weekends, or even on that long sought after vacation that we're supposed to be spending time with our family on. But I think that something that's really interesting is we kind of have a certain perception or ideas of people who work excessive hours. When you think of people in your organization that are on all the time, what is some words that come to your mind to describe them? Workaholic, okay. I was going in a little different direction, like hardworking or driven or dedicated. At my last job, I heard people say these words about people that were on all the time. They're so hardworking, they're so driven, they're so dedicated to the company. But do you think that it's possible that we can be all those things without having to be on all the time? I do. So, something that I would really, really highly recommend is that we start rewarding great work and a job well done rather than constantly recognizing people who are working excessive hours and giving us unlimited accessibilities. Our employees shouldn't be giving us unlimited accessibility. They should go home and they should take that time to come and be refreshed the next day. The last thing, and this one is the most important because it's something that all of us need to start doing, and it really ties into the rest, is we need to be the example. So I actually have a really funny personal story about this, and it involves pretty Miss Anna here in the back. She's with Avetta, which is a great company if you haven't heard of it. So Anna joined our team at my previous position at Avetta, and one day we were talking and she said, "You always seem to know what's going on when you get here first thing in the morning." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." But inside I was like, "Yeah, that's right. Like, I'm pretty with it. I know what's going on," because she was right. I was constantly checking my email, constantly checking my phone, because I felt like I always needed to know what was going on. Well, interestingly enough, a few days later we were talking and she mentioned something about not having the Outlook app on her phone. And I was very curious about this. And I asked her what her reason was for not having it. And she explained that she wanted the time that she spent with her family to really be dedicated to her family. And that in reality, most of the emails that she was getting at night could definitely wait until the morning to be answered. This was one of those moments for me in life where I felt like I was hit with a ton of bricks. It seems so simple, but I truly was like, "You're absolutely right. Most of the emails that I answer at night can definitely wait until the morning." So I followed her example a few days later and I got rid of the Outlook app on my phone. I'm not gonna lie, it gave me a little bit of anxiety for the first few days not knowing what's going on at all times. But she was so right. 95% of the emails that I had been answering at night before could wait until the morning. So I would encourage you to be the example to other employees in your organization. That's whether you're a coworker, a manager, HR, it really doesn't matter. We all need to set the example for each other. There's very simple ways that you can do this, like start by just taking a lunch break instead of working through your lunch, or wait until the morning to respond to that email about the company party. You don't really need to respond to that email tonight. All of these things are just little things that we can do, and we can start doing them right away, and they'll really start to reduce the employee burnout in our organization. But the most important point, and this is the one that I'm going to leave with you, is that it really truly does have to come from the top down. So my recommendation would be start having this conversation with your management, with your executives, because if we can all start the conversation and start figuring out ways to reduce the burnout in our organization, we're going to have much more happy and fulfilled employees. We're going to have less turnover. Our employees are going to be productive, and we're just going to be setting ourselves up for success. So with that, thank you so much for your time. Like Lacey said, I just started my own HR consulting business, so please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Allie Waite. I'm working on my website, but it's just right there. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to talk to any of you. And yeah, thank you so much.